Imperial Diary, year 10,191, third comment. The battle for Arrakis took everyone by surprise. There were no witnesses. The Harkonnen operation was perpetrated overnight, without warning or declaration of war. By morning, the Atredies were no more. All died in the dark.
Okay, retro go. Let's go.
Hello and welcome. Welcome and hello. This is Wait, You Haven't Seen? It's a show where we talk about movies and specifically talk about a movie at least one of us has never seen before. I'm your host, Travis, aka TV's Travis. This is episode number 315. And this week we watched Dune Part 2. And joining me to talk about it, because he had not seen it, and so I made him watch it, from the Nostalgiacast and Back to Bluey, it's Darin. How you doing?
Hey, good. How are you doing, Travis? Good to see you. It's been a while, right?
It has been a little while, yeah. And we got talking, and I was like, "Dude, I got to have you back on." And you brought up that you had watched Dune Part 1 recently, and so you're like, "Let's do Dune Part 2." I haven't seen that one yet.
Yep.
So, all right. So you saw Dune Part 1. What kind of history do you have with Dune in general, like the story, the books, all of that, as well as maybe the movies or different adaptations?
Well, it's all about the world building, right? And Dune's a novel that's been around, like 12 years longer than I've been alive. So obviously it's been in my ear, my brain anyway. But I don't know, like me and Dune, it just wasn't as engaging as like something like Lord of the Rings or the Star Wars world building, stuff that, when you watch certain things as a kid, certain things catch your imagination, right?
Yeah.
Even something like Flash Gordon with the famous Queen soundtrack, that got me more because it was Queen, and I grew up on loving that band because of my mom. Dune, I tried reading the novel, and it didn't capture my imagination. I watched the David Lynch 1984 or Alan Smithy, whichever version you want to think of, which one you watch, but basically the Lynch version. And I remember watching it as a kid, and I just thought it was really silly and just kind of goofy.
Sure.
And then I've seen clips of it since, and it's just I have no reason to go revisit it. And then obviously there was the 2004 Sci-Fi Channel miniseries. So I know that Dune is huge. I know that people love it. I know that William Hurt, who's in the miniseries, he read it when he was a kid or something like that, and he just thought it was like this really impactful thing. And you even go to when Denis Villeneuve was making the movie, he got Hans Zimmer to do the music, which is interesting because Zimmer had been working with Nolan, but because of some, I think, COVID or some delays, anyway, he was offered Dune, and so Zimmer could not do Tenet or whatever movie came after Dunkirk. And so ever since then, Nolan hasn't been using Zimmer. So, but he understood, right? I know Villeneuve and Nolan are friends, but it's one of those things where Zimmer's like, I've been waiting my whole life to do Dune. I can't turn this down.
Oh,
you know
for
what
sure.
I mean? So I understand that it's huge, but again, it just never did anything for me. Even though I like Villeneuve, like Arrival is probably, 2016, whenever that came out. That was the best movie of that year. I just thought it was a great, when you think of science fiction, there's a difference between science fiction and space opera. Like people will call Star Wars science fiction, but it's not. It's totally space opera with laser beams and the pew pew stuff like that. When I think of sci-fi, I think of 2001. I think of Blade Runner. I think of movies that are very thoughtful and they put ideas in your head and they're about what we mean as humans. All Star Wars has some of that too, you know what I mean? But it's not. People will watch 2001 and just be completely bored by it. But I'm enthralled by 2001. I'm enthralled by Blade Runner because they're not giving you the answers and you're trying to come up with the answers yourself. I just love that.
Yes.
And so Arrival, it got me emotionally with the twist at the end where you find out, anyway, the time, just I don't want to ruin it for people who haven't seen it. But obviously Arrival is a great movie. Prisoners is a great movie. So I'm a Villeneuve fan. You hear that he's doing Dune, so you're like, oh, this will be good. Like he'll do a good job with it. But it just never did anything. So why would I watch it? Like I don't have time to watch movies that I want to watch, movies that I don't really have any interest in.
I feel that.
But yeah, when you wrote me, I just watched it because my daughter, I'm so excited by this. She's taking an intro to film course. And she did it just because she didn't really have to do the homework, right? She could just, well, my dad can just tell me all. Like, I don't have to, like, I can just
Sure.
ask him. So we've been watching movies. We watched Umbrellas of Cherbourg. We've watched Little Women. We just recently watched, but
Oh, nice.
Dune was one of them that was on her list. So I was like, you know what? It's on your list. Let's finally do it. And I know that Dune is really big with people. I know that Villeneuve is big with people. But again, the movie, even though it was better than the David Lynch Smithy version, and I love the look of it. I love the design of it. I love the sound design. But the story just, again, didn't capture my imagination. I thought it was weird that it was a 2.5-hour movie and it seemed very episodic. Like stuff would just happen. It didn't have a good flow. It just seemed herky jerky to me.
I wonder how
And so
much of
again,
that. Yeah, I wonder how much of that though comes from like Dune was the foundational one that inspired a lot of
yeah,
sci-fi, and so what
absolutely.
we've seen since then is the refining of that storytelling and the
Right.
smoothing of it
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. So, I
And
mean, because
and that's yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
I was just gonna say, like you mentioned Star Wars, Dune was a
Yeah.
big influence on Star Wars, on George Lucas,
Yeah,
for sure.
right.
In fact, I remember when in 2021, when part one came out, people comparing it and being like, well, Star Wars did this already. I'm like, where do you think Star Wars got it? Like,
Right.
but that's a whole different conversation. So,
Yeah, and I've been getting addicted to watching reaction videos on YouTube where they sit down, they watch movies for the first time.
yep.
And it's fascinating because I get angry a lot of the time because they don't watch movies like I watch movies, right?
Right.
So I'm trying, like, well, they're maybe 20 years younger than me, so they're gonna have a different kind of, you have these people that just grow up and watching the Marvel movies, and so their whole idea of what emotion should be, or people dying, like, dying doesn't occur to them. That's not a thing that occurs to them because characters don't die in these comic book movies, right?
Yeah.
So I always had to put myself in that mindset, but I wish they'd appreciate it where they could watch something from the context of when it was made. So I'm huge on that. And that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. And I understand that I was weaned off of Star Wars. And even I think Ridley Scott was hired to do Dune. Like Dino De Laurentiis hired him to do in 1979 a version of it and just couldn't get around to it. But I talked Blade Runner. Obviously, that's going to have some
Mm-hmm.
influence, right? So I get that it's so big that everybody's just going to have that interest. But I don't know. It's just a way of taking something and making it appealing to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so and I absolutely agree. It's hard. It's just tough for me to put myself in that mindset of this came before Star Wars when I would grew up on Star. So it's hard
Oh yeah.
to kind of reconcile the two. And again, I don't think, like, if I was gonna give a rating to the first Dune, like out of 4 stars, I'd probably give it a 3. I thought it was very well done. The acting was great. I'm Ever since Wonka, I'm a big Chalamet fan. Like, I'm on board with Timothée
Mm-hmm.
Chalamet. So I think he's really good. But it just if again, and the other thing too, I guess, with the first one is it felt like they were setting the stage because Dune is such an immersive giant book. They're
Mm-hmm.
setting the stage for a second or third movie.
Yeah.
And so you could tell that they were just planting things without really. And so it ends on the biggest thing you could possibly end it with, right? Let's have Paul have a duel with one of the Freemen. Like, that's a climax.
Yeah.
And we can end it on that. So, but again, it just seemed like, I don't know. It just didn't do much for me. But Dune 2 got such a huge draw. When I watched the first Dune, I was on Twitter saying it was good, but it didn't really do it. And I had a few friends go, well, you're really going to like the second one because the first one sets up a lot of things that the second one will pay off on. And so that it was higher on my list because of what people were saying of it.
Sure. So now that you saw both parts of the story, first of all, you mentioned the David Lynch / Alan Smithy 1984 version, and that movie is really goofy. It's got some really silly stuff to it, but it also really, I mean, you could tell Lynch really wanted to make a movie, and then he just couldn't make the one he wanted
Yeah.
to. He couldn't translate it, and so that ended up with him kind of divorcing himself from it. But that told this whole story in 160 minutes, I think, or something like that. I don't remember how long it is now. But Denis managed to take, and he was able to stretch it out. The funny thing is, he did not shoot these back to back like you would do a lot
Yeah.
with a part 1, part 2 these days. Ever since sort of Peter Jackson broke that mold with Lord of the Rings, you do that now. If you're making a multi-part movie, they just shoot them all at once. And that didn't happen here. They didn't actually even get greenlit for this movie until the first one hit the theater. It was the opening weekend, basically. Warner Brothers was like, all right, we got a hit. We'll make the second one.
Mhm.
Which, boy, would that have been disappointing to not get part 2 of this story at all.
Right.
But
Kind
Villeneuve
of
even
like having the
said, like,
Flash pop
he's,
into Batman versus Superman
yeah,
to say
yep,
something's going to happen,
exactly.
and then it just doesn't happen.
And
Yeah.
then it never does.
Right.
And Villeneuve even said that he's, yeah, Villeneuve said he's happy that they shot it this way in 2 separate parts because it was a grueling shoot to do. Both of them were, as well as he was able to kind of learn from the first movie and refine those techniques for this part 2. So I kind of like that he was able to do that for as a filmmaker, because I do think he's one of the better directors going these days.
Yeah. I mean, he's a name. Like, you don't have a lot of people. You have IPs, like you have like franchises, but you don't really have like a good voice behind these things. We might have talked about this when we talked about Endgame, where I don't think that the Russo brothers have much of a
Mm.
voice. They seem more like they're good organizers. They can really take groups and make them,
Mhm.
work on screen. But there's no real voice. It's Feige, obviously, that's the voice of the MCU. And you have the
Yes.
occasional James Gunn or Ryan Coogler that comes in and or even Sam Raimi that comes in and says, well, this is definitely not just a Feige production. This is actually somebody's baby, right?
Sure.
But having, and again, that was the big draw of the David Lynch Dune, right?
Mhm.
I don't even think, maybe there's a difference too, because I don't think Lynch had even read the book. I don't think he was super familiar with it. Maybe that might have been what didn't really translate to, other than it was a, because the studio back, when you go back to the 70s and the Jodorowsky, they had him doing it. They wanted him
Mhm.
to make a 2 or 3 hour movie, and he's like, the material demands like like a 10 to 14 hour movie. Like, you just
Right.
can't do all this in 3 hours. Like, the world needs to be immersive, and you can't do that even in, you can't do it in 2 hours, but you can't do it in 3 hours, like, and so that was a big thing. They just couldn't greenlight it because Jodorowsky was like, the budget was too big. Same thing with
Yeah.
Ridley Scott. Ridley Scott had to split it into 2 because he just didn't think it would work as one thing. So, uh, it's a having somebody in your that's a big name, to be able to, and yeah, like you said, it's great that they took a
Mhm.
gamble to make the first, but without the second one being, but it's Villeneuve, like, he's gonna give you something. And again, even though I say that Dune doesn't capture my imagination like a Star Wars or Lord of the Rings, it's still impressive the amount of, like I said, world building and character work that's gone in, and you don't want to give that the short shrift.
No,
So,
you really don't,
so
because like your plot overall is really simplistic. It's
yeah,
just, but it's a lot of politicking going on. The books really get into the politics of this
right,
world quite a bit. But you don't want to short shrift your character development and like your world building, because without that, it falls even more flat.
right, exactly, and
So,
so I'm audiences today. Again, we bring up the MCU. They've got very short attention spans.
mhm.
They need like YouTube clips to, that's their what are, or TikTok. That's their attention span. They need to have quick bites of something. Dune is
Yeah.
something that you need to be patient with it. You need to let it grow on you. Again, I'm saying all this not being a gigantic fan of Dune, but I understand what the appeal is of it.
Mhm.
But if the world is so expansive, and again, I think it pays off better than the second one. Just kind of a spoiler for what I thought of it, but it's like, you once you're given the time, that first Lord of the Rings would not have worked if you didn't have that first, hour and a half of character development.
Yeah.
So at the very end, when it's Boromir, giving up his life for the ring, it hits really harder because you know who he is in and out.
Mhm.
If inside and out. If you didn't do that, if you didn't take the time to build the character, it would mean nothing. So a Lord of the Rings would not be made today because you have to get the action. Let's just get to let's fight the bad guys, defeat everything, get to Sauron within the first 2 hours, right? Which
Yeah.
it doesn't lend itself to that kind of storytelling, which Dune does. And I'm glad that it was a big enough hit that the bigger fans were able to help Warner Brothers see that, yeah, let's make a second one.
Yeah, and be able to, and give Villeneuve the leash to, hey, make your movie. And then he goes through, and this cast is unreal. I mean, we mentioned Timothée Chalamet. His
Mhm,
growth, even from part 1 to part 2 as an actor in those couple of
mhm,
years, is you see it come through in the performance, because Paul as a character goes from being this kid who doesn't really quite know what he wants to, by the end of this movie, I mean, he is this overly charismatic, like lightning rod.
Yeah.
And Chalamet brings that out. His performance, I thought, was fantastic in this movie.
Well, it kind of mimics his star trajectory, right? Like
Yeah.
these teeny bopper actors, like it's hard for me to like hone in. Like even Zendaya, I'm impressed with her now, but my kids used to watch the show that she was
Oh
on
yeah.
Disney Channel, and so I was like, this isn't acting. And
Mhm.
when you hear that she's in movies, it's like, oh no, like what is it going to be the same level? But she's been really impressive with
Yeah.
Challengers and all the stuff that she's been doing. But Chalamet again, until I think with Wonka, the big thing with being in a musical, I know that if you're a tough, toxic bro, like musicals aren't for you and they're for sissies, that kind of thing. But I think it's much braver to be in a musical and look foolish and look
Hmm.
silly and look vulnerable, but also have a really strong voice, a gift for choreography, a gift for, selling the singing, which is really silly. Like it's hard when you're watching a musical to kind of jibe with, oh, they're talking, but now they're singing their feelings out. Like
Right.
this isn't there's a disconnect there, but when you do it right, it works beautifully. I think Chalamet and Wonka, he had all that. He looked foolish, he looked silly, but he had a really strong voice. He was really commanded the screen. But you watch him in Dune as Paul. Yeah, he starts as this little kind of nerdy, kind of lanky kind of kid, and he proves it with the needle test or whatever. And by the time he marches into that council in this movie, and he's yelling at them like, "You will not like." How would you dull your own blade before battle and stuff like that? Or
Hmm.
I'm gonna just how he takes charge and everybody's kind of gasping. How he says, I am the Messiah, basically, right? I
Yeah.
was like, oh, that's good. Like I completely buy this kid.
Yeah.
Wow, like he commanded that room, and it's not just I don't know, it's not just play acting. I think he really had that gravitas.
No,
And it
definitely.
goes to when he won an award this year, I think for the Bob Dylan movie,
Hmm.
he was like, "I want to be legendary. I want to take roles that matter and that are huge." And I'm like, "Kid, you go for it." Like, even with your silly little mustache that he
Yep.
had, I was like,
Yeah.
"You go." I love that. You do it. I think you've got the chops. Like, you just make it happen.
Well, and Villeneuve is one of those directors that brings out good performances in people, because
Oh,
he does not um, get people that phone stuff in at all. I mean, you
right.
look at this cast: Timothée Chalamet. You mentioned Zendaya. She's great in this,
Mhm.
as Chani, but you also bring in Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica.
Jeez.
I, I have said this since I saw Doctor Sleep,
Mhm.
because in Doctor Sleep she plays Rose the Hat, and she's
Okay.
terrible. Like that character is absolutely just a horrendous character, right? Because
Mhm.
Rose the Hat is evil as all hell, and I'm like, yeah, but I would totally be trapped by her. Like Rebecca
Yeah.
Ferguson, it's just I'm in. I can't help
Kill
it.
me.
Like,
I don't
yep,
care.
it's over. But she is fantastic in this, and they expanded that role a little bit from the book, because in the second half of the book she just sort of kind of goes away for a little
Yeah.
while,
Yeah.
and they wanted her character to be a little bit more front and center. And I kind of like how they have her pulling some strings, and you see her doing some of that manipulation that the
Yeah.
Bene Gesserit do. Javier Bardem is Stilgar. I mean, there was the
Oh,
memes
yeah.
that came out, of the Lisan Al Gaib and As Written and all of these memes that came out, but like his performance
Mhm.
is so good and believable, because he is that Stilgar is that character that wants to believe in Paul as the Mahdi
Mhm.
so much that it doesn't matter what happens. All of it's going to feed his belief,
Yeah.
which is great. And Bardem is just phenomenal.
Tells the
He's on
story.
that list of like Javier Bardem's in a movie. He's going to be good. You know it.
Yeah.
But Austin Butler, I was not prepared for what I was getting with Austin Butler, because I did go see this in the theater, and
Mm.
I knew who Austin Butler was, but I hadn't seen him in too much yet. And then I heard that he was cast as Fade Ralph, and I'm like, all right, the guy that
Mhm.
played Elvis, cool.
Mhm.
Um, damn, he was he was scary in this.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, Bardem is a very even when in Skyfall, even when he's Silva, I think Silva might be my favorite James Bond villain of all time, just because Bardem just sunk his he was just having such a blast, more than
Mm-hmm.
any other actor I've ever seen, even more than Christopher Walken, speaking of which, who was a great villain in a terrible Bond movie. Like,
Yeah.
I think Bardem was just so fun, and he's got this big gravitas, but I like that he's warm, but that I it makes you're in his corner because when all these things are kind of feeding his beliefs, it's like, oh, he feels good because and you kind of side with him, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You feel that for him and you're happy for him, all that. Austin Butler, again, as Elvis, I thought he was very, very charismatic. Like, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what you need for an Elvis, right?
Oh, for
Him
sure.
in this, he's still very charismatic, but holy crap, like he's so weird. The way that he
He
mimics
is.
Skarsgård's voice, right? The way that he moves, the way that he looks, just the makeup, like he's got an amazing bald head. I don't know what
So
they did.
that was
He's
a prosthetic, actually.
really,
It
oh wow.
started.
Okay.
I saw a behind the scenes thing. They were talking to the makeup people. So Fade Routha, it started at like his cheekbones and went
Mm,
up over his head and all the way back down like the part of his neck to cover up his eyebrows and
yeah.
just slightly change the shape of his head, make it a little bit bigger. But like, yeah, he's frightening in this. The black teeth
Mm.
are off-putting. It's just weird enough because it's like there's when he would open his mouth especially when he would give that really creepy smile, the black teeth, it's like there's nothing there, but then you're getting a little bit of reflection. Like, wait,
Yeah.
what? That doesn't look right. Like something just off. Um, but his
You're afraid to be
introduction,
around him.
you really
Yeah, yeah.
are, you really are. And he did say because he's kind of he can tend to be a bit of a method actor from what I've heard.
Right.
And he said for this character, he didn't want to do that. And so he very
Mm,
much tried to keep that in check and do, from action to cut, really get into it and
yeah.
stay in the mindset, but not live it like you would with, say, Elvis. Um,
Right.
and I think Villeneuve even said, like, yeah, from action to cut, you were scary, but thankfully you were able to tone that down in between, so you didn't kill anyone. I think was
Right.
Villeneuve's actual quote.
Well, I know when he showed up on set, like he and Chalamet like immediately started practicing their duel, and
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
when you watch them fight, though, if you don't know anything about Austin Butler, you're like, this guy must be freaky in real life, right? Like I wouldn't want to be around him like off screen,
Right.
but it's like Heath Ledger's Joker. I know that he was very personable and charismatic on set of The Dark Knight, which is weird because you watch that character and you're like, I don't want to be around this guy. It's the same thing with Fade Routha. Like I like that dichotomy in this about how he'll just kill he doesn't care. He's not loyal
No.
to anybody. He'll kill people. When they kill his uncle, when they kill the Baron, the Christopher Walken character, the Emperor, basically shames him. He's enjoying the shame.
Hmm.
Like he's killing people left and right, doesn't matter. Take him back to my quarters. The creatures I got in there are hungry. While Paul Atredies is trying to save the people. He says, again, his whole arc is that he's becoming kind of villainous, but all through the movie he's kind of trying to avoid that. He's like, I don't
Hmm.
want to be this, like, this conqueror. I don't want to be that. And I'm trying to save people. I just want to be one of you, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, there's some really good character writing here that really pays off.
Yeah. And I love too. You mentioned it, but I loved his the way he messed with his vocals, and he found that voice to sound a little bit like Stellan Skarsgård, and that
Yeah.
was a thing he and Villeneuve came up with of like, hey, this guy probably spent most of his life living with the Baron. He's gonna emulate that a little bit, and I guess
Mhm.
from what I read, Stellan Skarsgård didn't know about that until he showed up on set, and it kind of threw him at
Yeah.
first, which it
Mhm.
would throw me too. So.
Right, right.
Um, and you also had Big Dave Batista as Raban,
Always good.
who, he- again, actors that don't phone it in. Like Batista really wants to be known as an actor. He
Mhm.
could very easily have gone the route of I'm going to be an action star. I'm going to really lean into the background as a pro wrestler, but he's purposefully done roles that have been kind of against type for him. This one, not as much because he is leaning on his physicality here, but he's got
Mhm.
such a great presence and uh, just this like aura about him that works and the
Yeah.
intensity. Um,
Right.
there was a thing where
Well,
apparently his agent didn't want him to do the scene where he gets beat up by Fade.
mm,
His
mhm.
agent was
And
like
kisses
warning
boot.
him about it. Yeah, kiss his boot. And he's like, no, that's important for this character. Uh, and
Yeah.
it works because it does immediately tell you Feyd-Rautha is worse. Like as bad as
Well, there's
Raban is.
right. There's the whole thing with Vin Diesel and The Rock, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
having that in their contract, they can never lose a fight, right? Which kind of, if you're looking at like Bruce Lee versus Jackie Chan too, like I'm a huge, being half Chinese, Bruce Lee was a legend in
Oh
my
yeah.
home, in my life, right? Jackie Chan too, but you watch the difference. Bruce Lee is never touched, like he's never phased, like, and that's part of what his aura.
Mm-hmm.
But Jackie Chan is looks foolish and he gets beat up, and there's the push pull. It's like a chess piece,
Yep.
chess game, and all this, and that's more involving. It's more fun because there's a risk, right? Even though Bruce Lee is the kind, you want him to walk in there and just kind of, nobody can beat this guy. I'm going to kick everybody's ass. That kind
Sure.
of thing. The Jackie Chan thing, but it's the same thing with Bautista. It's like, yeah, he's playing against type. Yeah, he's cast because he's this big burly dude. But like I said, with Chalamet, he's not afraid to look stupid or
Mm-hmm.
weak, and his character, um, he's again, he doesn't fit into the power structure, Raban, right? Like
Right.
he's obviously trying to do right by his uncle, but he doesn't keep the spice handled or whatever. And so obviously Feyd-Rautha comes in and is more of a conqueror and does all this. And so yeah, he doesn't, the Raban character doesn't fit in with this hierarchy. So that's the thing with Batista, especially at the Guardians movies. He's not afraid to look foolish or dumb, which you need that. You need that in a performance to
Oh,
really help
absolutely.
sell me on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was also, if you haven't watched Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery, he's great in that too. Like he's just
Yeah.
everything I see him in, he really brings it. All of them do. Josh Brolin, Gurney Halleck popping back up halfway through this movie. I love Gurney as a character, and Josh Brolin again brings that like that physical presence about him, that sort of an intimidation factor, which is
Yeah.
he's not the same size as Dave Bautista, but you always feel like Josh Brolin is 6'2". He just gives you that like that feel. But Gurney popping up is also great for Paul in his arc because he is, like you said, Paul is trying to fight this whole conqueror idea and this leader. He doesn't want to be that. And they sort of the story plays with that, right? Leto in the first part tells him like, a good leader doesn't seek that out, but he gets called to it, and it's whether or not he goes for it. And then Gurney popping back up now starts to talk to Paul and be like, hey, I know where the atomics are. Hey, you should be using what you've got, and try to push him in that way, because Gurney is a soldier. That's what he knows.
Yeah, you've built a reputation. Why don't you play off of that?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you pushing back against it? Right.
Yeah. So just love that. What did you think of Christopher Walken popping up as the Emperor?
I always love Christopher Walken. Like I mentioned, I'm always up for a Christopher Walken performance. I think in this, and maybe because I don't know the character as well as maybe I should. Like I just thought maybe anybody could have played him. I think there's a weakness there, and it's nice seeing him, but I don't know. I mean, am I wrong? Should he have been?
I mean, it's not a character, especially in the way this story is being told, that requires like a big name for it. Especially a Christopher Walken, but I did think it was interesting to put him in there because he does, he's kind of gone through this period of being almost a meme into himself with just the characters that he's played. And it's kind of nice to see him just do something very simple, very understated in his performance. But you're right. I mean, anybody could have been that, but I thought he worked well. And he delivered a line that I absolutely loved towards the end of the movie. Where he talks about Leto being a weak man, to Paul, and my thought at that point was like, that's not what you should be saying to this guy right now.
When he's got a knife to your throat, right?
That is the last thing you should be telling this dude.
Yeah. Well, even all the other houses coming down at the end to kind of attack Arrakis, like they don't take him seriously still, even though we take him seriously in the audience, right?
Yeah.
I think maybe Walken, because again, it's nice that they put him in here, because I know the Fat Boy Slim video, speaking of memes, the video that he's in where he's dancing around, which is a great video.
Oh, yeah.
They have a line in there that's about how you walk in the sand, I believe. And so it's a Dune
Yep.
reference. So having him in this movie kind of makes sense. The whole, I guess that's kind of a really good point, because the whole movie I was like, he's an emperor, how did he get to be in this position? You just see him like looking kind of puppy dog, like defeated the whole time. Is it just because he's past his prime, Or I think when he says like your father was a weakling, I think he just was a good strategist, and that's what
Yeah.
got him. That kind of hints at me that he was a strategic kind of leader. That, and again, that's the whole point when with him appointing Leto to take charge of Arrakis, and then realizing, oh, he can rise up against me, so I'm actually going to hire the the Harkonnens to come back and kind of take that power back from him. But I don't know. It's I'm like I said, I'm always up for Christopher Walken. I think he's great in everything. I like that he's got a good sense of humor about himself.
Hmm.
But again, I just don't. I didn't know if I was supposed to be sensing something else from him.
Not really. He's just. It's a good name to get. If you want the full
Yeah.
Walken, though, if you haven't seen it, The Rundown with The Rock
Oh
from like
yes,
2003, that is
yes.
Christopher Walken doing his best Christopher Walken
Christopher
impersonation.
Walken.
It's so good.
Right. Right.
Um,
Well, the rundown. Speaking of the Rock, I think that might be my favorite Rock
I think
film.
it's mine
Dwayne
too,
Johnson film.
probably.
Yeah, he's good in that one.
Yeah, and that movie's just fun. Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, some more of this cast, like Florence Pugh, and this, her star had been on the rise, kind of like Timothée Chalamet in a way, but like,
Well, they're in Little Women together, right? So
true, but I don't think either of them had, when they were cast in this, hadn't quite hit that peak yet. That but they were moving towards it, and by the time this came out,
right.
they were much bigger, I think, than when it had started. So.
Right.
Again, she doesn't have a ton of screen time, but her character is kind of important. And I do think you want an actor that isn't going to phone it in. And even in a smaller screen time role like this, she brought it quite well. I like her.
Well, I want to come back to her because I don't think we're there at the point we're talking about the movie yet. We're still talking about the performances. But
Sure.
yeah, Florence Pugh is an actress that I respect the hell out of too. So seeing her here is obviously, and having her be the princess, there's a difference. The thing with the Lynch version, and you're in trouble when this happens. When they have at just the very first frames of a movie, they have so much text that you have to read, or the Virginia Madsen character has to cut like a floating head and explain for 5 minutes to catch you up to speed with what's happening.
Yeah.
That's a problem. Whenever I'm sitting in a movie and I'm like, uh-oh, like they don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to set this up. So they're giving it to us like in a narration, right?
Yep.
And for Dune, the 1984, it just doesn't work. It's like, oh, you're cutting too many corners here. Like, let me catch up. Don't treat me like an idiot.
Yeah.
I can pick up on things. Don't tell me, show me, right?
Some
and that's
of
another
that-
difference.
I was just going to say some of that
Right.
I think is film, because that's studio definitely telling them to do that, right? It's
Yeah.
like studio telling Ridley Scott, hey, put in a voiceover of Harrison Ford in Blade Runner.
Absolutely. Yep. Great point.
They did the same thing in Dark City. There's a voiceover in the theatrical version of Dark City that ruins most of the movie right at the beginning.
Right.
And so Villeneuve knew, like, okay, I've got to show these things. I have to let that build instead of just dumping a bunch of exposition at the beginning of it, because it's really easy to fall into that trap.
Right. And maybe that's another problem with I felt it was all like setting everything up. So at the end, you're like, oh, now the story's starting. Maybe that's another reason why it didn't really do anything for me. But
sure,
having Pew show up, and it's like in the book, it's like journal entries. It's the same idea. She's just catching us up. By the time she comes into this movie, she's catching us up to speed on stuff we already know, except we didn't know it was Christopher Walken that was the Emperor, right? We didn't know all that stuff. So you're set, and she has that narration. But I think, again, that's about building Paul's kind of aura and his legend, where if somebody's going to journal about it because she sees her dad make these decisions that's causing this Messiah to rise up. I thought that was a better choice. But again, you have Florence Pugh doing it. She'll demand attention.
Yeah, exactly. And one other person aside from Villeneuve I wanted to mention, because you mentioned Hans Zimmer and the music in this is phenomenal. And it's such a crime that this score didn't get nominated for the Oscar this year. They disqualified it because it reused a bunch of motifs from the first movie. And
that's hypocritical.
It is very hypocritical, because I've seen other scores from sequels that get nominated, but he did get nominated for the first movie, but he should have been nominated for this because Hans Zimmer's score is phenomenal.
Like we talked about, it's like I think it's great because I think Zimmer's my favorite composer. You talked about in your Iron Giant episode with Michael Kamen how there's music that you can't. It's like a Garbage Man, I think was the you and your guest were talking
Mhm.
about, where if they're doing a good job, you can't tell that it's happening, which is fine. I like that. But then also Zimmer's the kind of guy that was criticized because you could hear the music and you could hear the themes. You could hear the
Yeah.
Pirates theme in your head. You can hear Gladiator. You can hear the Dark Knight, stuff like that, or Batman, the Nolan movies. And I love that for Zimmer because
I do
he's
too.
a very strong presence, right?
Mhm.
Um, I think Dune is a very, very strong oral background stuff. I can't really pick up on a lot of the themes that I usually like, or there's always a part in a Zimmer score where I listen to it over and over and over again. And it's, I don't mean that as a, I don't mean that as a criticism. I think Dune, you need that. You need kind of a background. And Chani and Paul have a theme, so
Yeah.
that's noticeable, right?
Yeah.
But again, I just think it's good background kind of support. And the thing with the Oscar, it's terrible because what John Williams is just nominated for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. It's like, what do you think
Yeah.
we're stupid, Academy? Like you just nominated this movie. Star Wars was nominated for multiple things. Lord of the Rings was nominated for
Yeah.
multiple each movie. So don't give me that crap, right? You even go back to The Godfather. I think the Nino Rota, he used the theme for The Godfather. He'd already used in a different movie.
Yeah.
So they disqualified him for that. But then when The Godfather 2 came out, they nominated him again. I don't know if he won because that doesn't really matter to me, but they nominated him
Yep.
for using the same theme that they banned him from the previous Oscars.
It
Oscars are just
They don't
year
make
by year,
sense half the time.
right?
And I'm more interested with the Academy Awards of who got nominated than necessarily who won. Although it is always
Yeah,
interesting to me to look and like, oh, here's the actors that were nominated that year, and then this one happened to win. But you look and it's like, wow, that was a stacked year. Like
yeah.
it's impressive to be able to come out on top on that. But somebody like Hans Zimmer for this score should get nominated, just like Greg Fraser for the cinematography.
He wasn't
Holy crap!
nominated for this?
No, he was. He was nominated for it
Okay.
for sure.
Okay, I was gonna
Um,
say, what the hell are you doing?
but I was really surprised because I missed watching some of the Academy Awards, so it just kind of wasn't in my head. Like I know Anora won Best Picture, and but I didn't know that The Brutalist won cinematography. I kind of want to see it just to see because how this didn't win, I don't know. The cinematography in this was unreal. Just the look of
Yeah.
everything and the fact that they could take most of it takes place on Arrakis, which is a desert planet, but they managed to make different parts of Arrakis look different through the lighting.
Yeah.
And then when they would go to a different planet like Getty Prime, and we get one scene on Getty Prime, really two, but one of them's indoors. But that scene in the arena where we're introduced to Fade Routha
Yeah.
is so good, and it would have been so easy for that to just feel like it was on Arrakis because it's just this sand pit arena, but they decided to really do something different, and that whole infrared black and white,
Yes.
wow, was that crazy looking. I mean,
If you didn't mention it, I totally would have. The way they used that infrared, and it made it so, again, so bleached white
mhm.
that the grays kind of stood out. The grays of the Arrakis people or the Atreides people, right? Like
Mhm.
it's the same doctor that betrayed them in the first one that he fights, right? Is that the same?
No, it's a different person. So that doctor in
Oh,
the
okay.
first movie died in the scene where
Oh, right.
Leto
And that where he does
does the
okay.
tooth thing.
I
But this
I
was
feel bad because I'm half Chinese and I completely misplaced his face.
that's actually the character is never named, but the character is
Okay.
Lanville. He's just an Atreides, but it's Roger
Okay.
Ewan that played him, and he was
I see.
also the fight choreographer.
Oh, okay.
So I thought that was kind of
Cool.
fun.
All right.
But that scene, all that infrared stuff, so they shot it with an infrared camera. And the fun thing about that from a technical standpoint is typically there's a filter on film cameras to filter out infrared.
Hmm.
So they actually had to pull that filter off and put a different filter on that would only let IR light through and block visible light. But they had to modify the cameras they had because they were shooting on Arri 65s, and Aeroflex didn't have enough cameras to loan them that could do black and white, so they had to modify the ones they had.
Mm-hmm.
And just doing that and just doing the infrared photography alone would have been impressive enough. But did you notice the couple of shots that transitioned as people
Yeah.
would be walking
Yes.
from the normal light into the infrared light?
Yes.
Those are just, it's really cool the way they did that because they used a 3D rig. So
Okay.
it's two cameras, but they mounted them instead of normally with a 3D rig, everything's offset. So you get kind of two perspectives and then you can meld them together. They
Yeah.
changed it so both cameras lined up perfectly, but they have like one camera looking straight on and one, I think it's usually mounted underneath with a mirror so they can look through there. And one was shooting in normal light and one was shooting in IR, the same image, so
Mm.
that they could just crossfade between them.
Yeah.
And it
I
looks so good. Like when the Bene Gesserits are walking out and they're, they come walking in and they're in that all black. And when they walk out into the infrared and it turns white, I was like, oh, that is just, that's just flexing. It's so cool looking. And it's so
well, it's
alien too.
It is, and it was so, like I said, so bleached white that it kinda sears into your brain,
Mm-hmm.
that when Fade opens his mouth and there's the black, it's kinda like,
Oh,
"Oh," like, it's such a contrast, and again, there's no excuse for me not knowing how they did that, because I really should have looked into how they pulled that off. I guess maybe it's just because I was so impressed that maybe I didn't wanna know how, but I'm glad that you told me all that because, yeah, it's the filmmaking here. Again, you talk about the performances. I think it's the same because again, we know that Denis and Christopher Nolan are good friends and they
mm-hmm.
praise each other to the high heavens, right? But when you're on a Nolan set, it's not, he doesn't really, I don't think Nolan comes off as somebody that's a tyrant, but you're on set, you see the command that he has, and you want to do your damnedest to give the best possible
Yes.
performance or the best behind the scenes work you've ever done. It's the same thing with Villeneuve. It's like, yeah, I'm on a movie that matters just because he's doing it, so I'm going to be sure that I'm giving it my all. And
Yeah.
I love that he worked with Butler to make Butler stand out and let him figure out his own character. I love
Yeah.
stuff like that because, yeah, it's a voice, and I'm really huge on voices, but you also have to. The whole point of a director is to control. I know that I don't believe in the auteur theory so much, but I do believe that a director should be the final word on everything. He
Mm-hmm.
should be able to take the performances, take the choices you make, take the dialogue, and make it work instead of kowtowing to what an actor tells him that he thinks he could do. And I think Villeneuve has a lot of that. Nolan has a lot of that.
Yeah.
Spielberg obviously has a lot of that, where it's like, yeah, Martin Scorsese. We could keep naming off directors that have it. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? But they're going to let other people play, but it's still going to be their vision. I think that's important. And every time you watch a Villeneuve movie, you can tell this is a Villeneuve movie, which is, again, so great.
Yeah. And because there is, I mean, obviously there's collaboration that goes on. You're going to work with people, but to your point, the way you phrase that I think is perfect. The director should have the final word because it's their vision in the end. Whether it's
Yeah.
Tarantino, whether it's Scorsese, Catherine Bigelow, all of them, when you watch their films, you see that, you feel that. And
Well,
Villeneuve is
it's a,
one that does it.
yeah, it's a Christopher Nolan film. It's a
Yep.
Denis Villeneuve. It's a Quentin Tarantino film, a Martin Scorsese picture. Again, I'm sorry I keep coming at them, but when I see a Russo brothers movie, I'm like, what does that mean? I don't know what that means, because I'm not getting a sense of who these people are. So I, again, yeah, you need to have that kind of control. Otherwise,
And I think
I don't know, it
to
just doesn't last.
but to that point, like it's a different. The Russo brothers are doing a different kind of film. There are
Yeah.
those directors that are like the studio hands. I think of the one I think of a lot is Peter Hyams. Was that kind of a
Yeah.
director in like the 80s and
Right.
90s, where
Mhm.
you needed somebody who could stay on budget, stay on schedule, make a movie, make a watchable, entertaining movie, but it wouldn't have the same voice that
Yeah.
that a Scorsese film would have.
Right.
And I think
But you don't always need a Scorsese voice, right?
right, yeah, you don't. I think it all depends on the story you're trying to tell. Marvel movies are trying to tell a fun adventure. They don't
Yeah.
necessarily need that same voice. It is fun when
It's
you can work that in.
serialized.
When you can get Ryan Coogler to do Black Panther, you
Yeah.
get something a little bit better than some of the other ones. But end of the day, like to me, all the Marvel movies are still watchable. There's nothing
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with them, but they are watch and move on. Something like a Nolan film or David Lynch is the one for me in the last few years that I've really gotten into. You watch that and it sticks with you
Yeah.
in a different way.
Well, we're speaking of reaction videos. I think what we're talking about here is really important. Again, I throw the Russo brothers under the bus because I just them coming out and talking in public about what film means. I'm like, just you're not the guys to do that because your movies don't reflect the way that you talk about your movies. So I can come at them all day, but you watch a Captain America: The Winter Soldier for a reason. It's not really to pick up the director's voice or Avengers: Infinity War, which we talked about. It's not really to pick up a director's what he feels about the world and what he's using these characters to say, because that's not what makes the movie over $1 billion, right?
Right.
You just want Captain America to show up and punch people, and it's fun, and you play the Avengers theme. It's great. I just think that you need to be able to know, and it's really important. So I'm sorry that if I haven't been coming across this way.
No.
You have to approach a movie on its own terms.
Yes.
So I can't watch Captain America: Civil War and expect Prisoners or expect Arrival, or expect Dunkirk or anything like that. You have to get in the mindset, oh, I'm watching a Marvel movie. It's just going to be a fun way to spend 2 hours. Well, that's the whole point. Whether it's a Kugler or a gun doing it, make it last a little bit more. The whole point is to give you a fun superhero spectacular, right?
Exactly.
But when you sit down for a Nolan movie, Joe Dante is another big favorite director of mine. When you sit down for a Joe Dante movie and I don't know if Travis, you've seen a movie called Explorers, which
Yes.
starts off really strong, and then it just, for the last 45 minutes to an hour, it completely loses its way and kind of meanders to the point where you're like, what am I watching this for? And because it's Dante, it's extra crushing because you're like, you're usually so much better than this. So unless it's something like that where you expect something like Nolan, you don't expect maybe a certain thing every time. Villeneuve definitely, you're not going to watch Prisoners and Dune and Arrival and have the same tone. That would just be
Right.
silly, right?
Mhm.
But I think it's so important that you watch a movie and are able to appreciate it on its own terms.
Yes.
And yeah, the Marvel movies, at the end of the day, I would rather watch Dune, than a
Mhm.
because I'm going to at least be intellectually kind of stimulated, as weird as that sounds. That's what I want.
Yeah.
But every now and then I do need that popcorn kind of flavor thrown
Sure.
in.
You got to cleanse the palate a little bit and try
Yeah.
something, and it also helps you to, I think, appreciate when you do get that thing. Like I just went and watched Hell of a Summer, just
Okay.
released. It's co-directed by Finn Wolfhard. It's just a silly little like
Wow.
slasher horror movie. He co-wrote and co-directed it. Bunch of kids at a summer camp. Killer shows up. People start dying.
Right.
Very by the numbers, pretty simple. Nothing groundbreaking, but it was fun and I enjoyed it. And it was a nice like kind of horror palate cleanser to watch. But it's not it's not X or Pearl or something like that, where it's like that's Pearl is one that I watched and it was like, whoa, this is something else, because you got a Ty West really trying to tell you something with that.
Yeah.
So it's just a very different type of storytelling, but I like both. So yeah,
Right.
I'm with you. Like if I have the choice to watch Dune or watch Iron Man, I'm probably going to watch Dune because I just
Right.
there's something I really like about that. But still, if Iron Man's on, I'm not going to say no. Somebody's like, "Hey,
Right.
let's watch this." Cool, yeah, I got that. Because
Mhm.
I do agree with you. You need to approach a movie on its terms. What is that movie? And I think
Right.
that gets lost sometimes in a lot of film discourse or film reviewing. I'm putting in big air quotes online, where somebody
Absolutely.
watches a movie and they're upset because the movie wasn't what they expected it to be. They had made a determination of what it was going to be before seeing it, and then it didn't meet that
Right.
expectation, so therefore it's trash.
Yeah.
That's a horrible way to look at things.
Well, that's kind of like I've been meaning to say this somewhere on some platform, but it's kind of like your family member. Your family members are always there's going to be family members that disappoint you. Just
Mhm.
because they disappoint you, that doesn't mean you don't love them. That's a weird. Just because a movie has a little flaw in it, you're like, well, this is trash because it's not perfect. It's like, well, then why do you like your drunk brother-in-law, right? Why do
Right.
you, even though
Mhm.
you like hanging around him and he can talk movies with you, why do you he falls off the wagon every Christmas. Like, why do you still like him? He's flawed. right? Shouldn't that be your attitude for everything? I don't know. I
Yeah.
just think that's kind of a weird attitude to have. Excuse me. I'm going to plug in my charger here while we're talking.
Oh yeah, no problem. No, I agree with you
I don't
though.
want this to die.
Yeah, it is a weird mentality to have of like, oh, the movie wasn't what I wanted, therefore it's bad. Well, no, and sometimes like I've definitely fallen victim of, oh, the movie wasn't what I was expecting, and
Mhm.
I need to reevaluate that, and it can sometimes be a big hill to climb to give a movie a second chance if
Yeah.
it did that to you. But
Yeah.
I have found when I've done that in the past, more times than not, I come to appreciate what the film was once I can look at it with the right mindset. Because
Mhm.
you're always a different person every time you see a movie. That's just
Oh
the
yeah.
way it is.
100%. Yep.
For you, I mean, watching Dune, not having like a big, because I think that's part of it too. If you didn't grow up loving Dune and then you go to watch Dune Part 1, to your point, it is a lot of setup. It is the first
Yeah.
half of a story. And I know in the theater, the first title card that comes up that says Dune does not say Part 1.
Yeah.
Now, on the home release version, it does. But it didn't
Hmm.
say Part 1 until the very end. And
Interesting.
there were quite a few people that were like, this is a Part 1. Like they didn't
Yeah.
understand what was going on. And this is one where you really do need to see both halves of this. It's kind of like when we talked about Avengers Endgame. It's a very similar thing where like Infinity War and Endgame really do kind of have to go together. There's a lot
Mhm.
between those two that fills out the story. This is
Yeah.
more so because it literally was one story broken up.
Mhm.
But it seems like you appreciated the story more after watching part 2.
Yeah. So again, it's interesting that first of all, I thought it was interesting because I think when they bought the rights to Dune, Warner Brothers, whatever, they bought the rights to Stephen King's It at the same time,
Mm.
which also does that thing where the movie starts out. And I remember sitting in the audience and I liked the first It. Like I really enjoyed it. And I
Mm.
understood because I know the book that they were only concentrating on the kids.
Yeah.
So I got what was happening. But in that theater, as soon as this is end part 1, people in the audience groaned. And I
Mhm.
was like, "Oh, that's not good. That's going to kill some people's enthusiasm for the movie."
Right.
So, yeah. So here's the thing. I wanted to bring up Florence Pugh from this perspective, right?
Sure.
Watching or actually, let me back into it. I'm so sorry that I do these tangents, but you talking about approaching a movie on its own terms. I don't have time being a father, being somebody that works 60, 70 hours a week. I don't,
Mhm.
if I'm going to sit down and watch a movie, it needs to work for me or I'm going to be upset. Right.
Sure.
But not every movie is going to work. So I have to approach so this is what I've done for a while and it's kept me from being an old grumpy puss. If I'm sitting down and I know a movie is a comedy, if at the end of the day, at the end of that 2 hours, if I've laughed and had a good time, the movie is quality.
Mhm.
If it's a horror movie, if it raises my blood pressure, if it gets my heart pumping, right? At the end of those 2 hours, if it's done that, I felt I've been to an experience, it's a good quality movie. Same thing with action movies, same thing
Yep.
with romance movies. Rom-coms are the most predictable genre on the face of the planet. As long as at the end of those 2 hours, I believe in the 2 actors falling in love, that they had chemistry, good job, movie, right?
Yeah.
I think if you approach a movie from that viewpoint, you're never gonna walk away pissed off and grumpy because you've gotten what the movie was asking of you, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And I think the thing with Dune is that I was expecting, because I'd known everything about Dune, because I've attempted to read the books, because I knew the whole history, I know how much this means to everybody. There's a passion to this movie that everybody just loves, to the first one and the second one, that just loves this world, love this story, love the book, love the words that are coming out of their mouth. I could tell there was a passion there. And I was expecting a science fiction movie because everything I'd been told, this is like the 2001 kind of science fiction that I'm looking for, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, it was that, but at the end of the day, I had more questions than I had answers, and I think part of that is knowing that there's a second movie. This one has kind of the same issue, where if you have big actors who are in a movie but they don't really do anything, like Rebecca Ferguson doesn't really do, she's kind of there, and like you said, she has a bigger part in this. Um, it's and Dave Bautista, I think he fits the WWE, what you expect of him in the first, because he's just a big, tough kind of threat, right?
Mhm.
It's in the second one that he gets another dimension.
Yeah.
So with Florence Pugh, the only issue I really had with this movie, yeah, it took me a little bit. I didn't really get into the movie until they started launching their offensive, and because I like the idea that they turn the chosen one thing on its head. It's not like the Matrix. It's
Yep.
not like any of these Harry Potter, where the chosen one is going to rise up. He's going to be the hero. Paul Atreides becoming the chosen one is a bad thing.
Yes.
He doesn't want to take the response. He doesn't want to be the conqueror. He doesn't want to have this lead to a holy war that's going to kill billions of people. He doesn't want that. That's why we respect it. But over the course of the movie, and it really started building and started getting me, the more and more it dove into the story. He doesn't want to do that, but this to not let his people be killed, to come out victorious and not lose to the Harkonnen, he has to take these steps.
Yep.
There's literally a part where he's like, I can't go south with you. I can't, Johnny. I can't do, what happens. He
Mhm.
walks off. He says, talk to me. I think talk to me, mother, is what he does. And the mother says, you have to go. Or is it the mother? Or am I getting the name wrong? Is it her that basically talks to him?
It's yeah, he's talking to I think her, or trying to like channel her, and also Jamis from the
Okay.
first movie.
That's Chalmers. Right.
Yeah, so he's like, he's just looking for help, basically.
Okay.
Um
But when he does that, I didn't want to get that wrong. But when he
Mhm.
does that, it's like, you have to do this. Yeah, if you don't do this, this bad thing's also going to happen. So it's like,
Yeah.
all right, let's do it. And he keeps telling Chani, I'll love you forever. Like, I won't let you go. That kind of, even though we can tell what's going to. The more he grabs power, the less of a human he's going to be, basically.
Yeah.
So the more that it turned that chosen one thing on its head, I thought was great. So having Florence Pugh in here, I don't think she gets to do much, is the
Mhm.
only issue. But that's just because she's going to be a bigger part in the Dune Messiah, right? I mean, in the
Yeah.
book, she becomes the Princess Irulan or whatever. She
Yep.
becomes a bigger part in the story. So you can tell, if it was any other actress, if it was an actress that I had no idea who she was, if I hadn't seen Little Women, if I haven't been seen Oppenheimer, watched all her roles and kind of build her kind of aura as an actress, I wouldn't have thought anything. I wouldn't have had second thoughts about her. Oh, she's obviously going to become a bigger
Mhm.
story point. But because it's Florence Pugh, she, like I said, she doesn't really get to do much, but they plant her in there so you know that the next movie she's. So again, you get what I'm saying? That's another
Yep.
problem. I'm like, well, this doesn't feel super complete. It feels like there's more that I'm not yet seeing. So I can't really judge this movie as a movie until I see the whole story, because these characters aren't. The Brolin character is the same way. Like, he disappears halfway through the first, when the Harkonnens launch that attack. You
Yep.
don't see him again. I thought he was dead when he showed up here. Yeah, it was a relief, but he becomes, like you said, he becomes more of a character, more of a father figure, more of a. I don't know. I liked him. There was never a point where I thought they were going to betray the Atreides people. Like
Yeah.
when they're, I like when they're joking about where they've hidden the atomics, and
Mhm.
Bardem is like, it's too simple. Like, why would you put it there? And it's like, well, that's why it was so simple, right? So
Yep.
that stuff was, or he says that there's enough atomics in here to blow up the whole planet, and they stare at him and he goes, it's a figure of speech,
I
right?
love that.
So that whole, I like, you know that's what I mean. Like, the first movie was kind of setting up these archetypes, which I guess is what even the first Guardians of the Galaxy does. It
Yeah.
sets up these people that aren't people. You can tell they're just different aspects of heroes. And then by the second one, you start giving them dimensions. That's when it builds. Same thing with Empire Strikes Back.
Yep.
Same thing with Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. So I feel like I'm giving the first movie an unfair shake, just because maybe because I knew there was a second one, I was just waiting around. I was like, well, this isn't going to go anywhere.
There's
And
some of
like I
that,
said,
but I think also it's a
it
fair
ends with them,
criticism.
that duel. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just thought, like I said, the story, and the great thing, we talked about Fraser's cinematography. Every time I wasn't really interested in the story, there was a shot in here that I was like, holy shit, how did they come up with that?
Yeah.
And like, you saw it in a theater, and we talked about with Endgame. Like I said, I didn't get out to see Endgame. I didn't get out to see this in the theater, and I'm kind of kicking myself, because I expect there to be a difference between watching this on my TV at home versus watching it in IMAX. Just some of the shots were just so amazing in here.
It really, it's one of those where it benefits from the best looking screen and best sound you can, because it gets so immersive and you just
Yeah.
feel it all, and you can really appreciate the visual effects work that they did, because like sand and dust is always hard to get right digitally anyway, to make it look convincing. And there's
Yeah.
at no point in in this movie, really either of them, do I not feel like I'm convinced that there are sand and dust floating around everywhere. When
Yeah.
you know that, like, yeah, they probably had some. I know for the worm riding scene, they had a set built that was like the back of the worm. And it was on a back lot, and they had, a sand cannon, and they were blasting the actors with sand for a bit. But that's probably like 30% of what you're seeing, and the rest of it's all built digitally. But it's so convincing. All of it is. And it's just, it's great to see. But like, I'm with you on that. It's just great filmmaking, and it's kind of what we keep talking about, like everybody bringing it, because you've got this unified vision, and nobody wants to let that down. No one's phoning it in. Your VFX team's bringing it. Greg Fraser is bringing it.
Right.
With all of that work. I mean, I love
The
stuff
biggest
he's doing.
compliment I can give the first movie is that I never thought I was on set at any point. I never thought I was in a studio. I always thought I felt like we were on a different planet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big like the story world building, like I said, didn't really do anything for me, but I believe that I was there on that planet. And that's a huge, and again, when the movie was over, right, my daughter and I were talking about it because she has questions that she needs to answer from her professor.
Sure.
And so we're talking about implicit meaning, stuff like that. And I was like, the movie it didn't engage me in an emotional way. I kind of stood outside of it, but the visuals are fantastic. The soundscape. So we were messaging each other this morning, and I had to split this movie up. Like, I watched the first half last night. I watched the part until Fade Ralph is introduced, and then they have before he goes and meets the Leia Sadu character, and they have that whole thing. That's where I stopped it. So again, I was watching it on a big screen. I was like, well, this kind of does, but I still wish I could have seen this in a theater.
Mm-hmm.
But then in the morning, I woke up early, and I was like, I told you I need to finish watching it. So I had to watch it on my laptop. I didn't want to wake anybody up, and I had my headphones in. Again, by doing that, the visuals didn't really impact me as much as it really should have, but having the soundscape in my ears constantly, there's a low moaning or the sound of the wind or Zimmer's music. I was like, this sound design is incredible. Like, it's really, really immersive. It's not just the visuals, it's also that sound that kind of envelops you in the world that you're living in.
Yeah. Yep. And it did win Academy Award for visual effects and for sound design. So earned those for sure.
Good.
The
technical awards are the ones that I'm more interested in, because those seem to be from the people that know what they're doing awarding those.
Yeah, it feels more like that. I did hear, this was kind of a little bit of a tangent, but I was there's a podcast I listen to called the VFX Show, and it's a bunch of it's 3 visual effects professionals, and they talk about VFX movies. But every year they'll do their Oscar roundup, and they'll talk about who's in the Bake Off for the technical awards. And one of the things they brought up this year that I never really thought about before, but it was kind of neat to get it in this context, is when you get to the point of the actual Academy Award choices, you have to remember that the Academy is made up almost fully of actors. The majority of the Academy are actors. And so the films that are going to win oftentimes are going to be very actor-focused things, because that's what they know. And I never really put that together before, but it makes a lot more sense why some films win over others, or some things do over other stuff. So I just never thought about that. But yeah, it was visual effects, which I will say the visual effects win, very well earned, surprised me, only because of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes and Better Man and those movies being nominated as well. But this movie earned, I mean, it definitely deserved it. The work with Villeneuve has this ability to portray scale on screen in a way that few can. Like, the scale of things in Dune, Arrival's another one that shows that, but like the scale of things in Dune, both parts of it are so alien to us, and yet I believed every second of it. Like when you'd see those big ships in orbit, and then a thing would come off of it, and it looks like a little dot, and by the time it lands, it's 150 feet tall, and just being able to show all that, or the way some of the sets were set up. That scene with Fade and and Leia Sadu, where they're walking down that hallway. Just the scale of everything in that hallway makes them seem so small inside this giant chasm of a room. I just love that. It's something that Villeneuve always has impressed me with his ability. Blade Runner did it too. Blade Runner gave me a lot of
Yeah.
like really interesting scale stuff.
Right. Well, again, what's interesting about watching the visuals is I'm just gonna believe that they built the entire set. You
Right?
know what I mean? It
I
looks so
know.
real. Like I don't. When you're doing comparisons, I keep throwing other people on the bus. But the Star Wars prequels, I can always tell that it's special effects and what was not real. You know what I mean? It seemed
Mhm.
like Phantom Menace. It seemed like they were at least on half the set, so there are at least physical things that they can interact with. By the time you get to Revenge of the Sith, I'm like, I don't believe that these people are in the same room with each other. You know, it's like
Yeah.
I don't buy any of this. And the scene that you talked about with Seydoux and Butler, they have that those, or even the part where they walk into the atomics and you see all the like the bombs. I'm like, I
Mhm.
just believe that they built that whole thing. This doesn't look like it's a matte painting or anything like
Right?
it. Just looks like they actually built the set to scale. It's incredible, and that's again, I think that's something that's hard to do. That shows talent, and the special effects too. When you said it shows the ships, they have actual weight. It feels like they're
Mhm.
heavy when
Yes.
Chani and Paul are trying to outrun the legs of that the
Oh,
what to destroy the helicopters. I'm like, I feel the weight of that, and that's again, Nolan tries to be very practical. I know that Spielberg, when he like you look at something like Minority Report, the special effects are so integral and so immersive, but they never take away from the human story. They're more of a
yeah.
background kind of thing.
Mhm.
But with Dune, as much as it, I keep saying this, as much as it doesn't engage me in the brain, I think what I'm watching, this is what I can. If I can tell if you're a Dune fan, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but I can tell if you're a Dune fan that this is going to impress the hell out of you. I can tell that
Oh
they've
yeah.
done a good job with making this world. Again, that's even though I don't, it's a 3 out of 4 star movie, the first one. I still appreciate at least the scope of what they're doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's the same thing here. I would probably give Dune 2 maybe a 3.5 thing because again, it does that thing. It still feels episodic. The part where you see Rabin like trying to escape, and all of a sudden it shows Gurney show up. He's like, "I'm gonna kill you," and then he kills you, and then the next scene he's at a completely different place. That's what I mean
Yeah.
about it feeling a little episodic. When they
Mhm.
just had to throw this in, it's not really built into the fabric of the. So that kind of stuff kind of took me out of it. But again, like I said, whenever the story wasn't engaging me, what is that shot where you first see Gurney? It's just barren wasteland, and he's running.
Oh,
You see him running from the back, and all of a sudden they all pop up, and I was like, "Whoa, that
yeah.
was cool!" Like and the movie's just, or the other shot where it shows Paul showing up at the council, and that shot of him wading through all the people.
Oh.
It reminded me of one of the really thick shag carpets. Like you're looking at a
Yes.
thick shag carpet, but you see a bug like walking through it and you
Mhm.
can see it making a path. I was like, that looks really cool. Like they put some really good interesting thought into the visuals here.
They really did. And that is a shot too. It's not often that a wide shot will make me feel claustrophobic, but that one does. Because it's
Yeah,
this wide shot, it's thousands of people, and I'm just like, oh, I'm like just tensing up because you just have to, there's no room to move. I love that.
right.
That the shag carpet is a great analogy though, because it does look like that. It just looks it's like raptors in tall grass. You just see a tail.
Oh, that was probably the greatest sequence in The Lost World. But again, when Paul walks in and he takes control of that, and they're like, "You can't talk. Like you're not supposed to talk
Yeah.
unless you
Oh.
kill." You know what I mean? You have to kill this guy. You have to kill your Stilgar before you can actually make any. And he's like, "No, I will have none of this." And the way that he walks off and he's able to say, "You've wanted to do this since you were a kid," or he has their inner thoughts, and he
Hmm.
basically shows them that he's the Messiah, right? That was when I was 100% in on the movie. I'm like, okay, this is what I was looking for. I know that it took maybe an hour and a half to get here, but this is what I wanted out of that first movie, and now it's got me. So
Yep.
I really loved to where the sandworms come out. I was like, oh, that was this might be the coolest thing I've ever seen. I think that's what you want from a sci-fi movie like this.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's oh, man. Yep, absolutely. And I do love that, because sometimes in a movie that has some subtext or it doesn't exposition dump, people
Yeah,
can tend to take the wrong lessons from it. And I'm glad that you picked up on the fact that like Paul's arc isn't a good arc. He's
yeah,
very reluctant. And I noticed on this watch through that his um his cracks started earlier than I thought. I remember coming out of the theater initially feeling like, man, they kind of accelerated his, I don't want to say fall from grace, but it's sort of that, where his turn. But I noticed this time around, it they did plant the seeds for that much earlier, and it was a slower progression than I remembered. But then it does ramp up. Like once he decides to go south, it really accelerates.
Yeah.
And it is interesting to watch because like he is very
There's
reluctant
no
to do it.
turning back. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, up until he made that decision, he's got kind of an out clause of no, I'm not going to do this. I can't do this. I don't want it. And once he realizes he has to do it, there's a line he says earlier, I think, where he tells Chani, I will love you forever, or something like that.
Until I stop breathing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. My
but
last breath.
I will do what I must, or I will do what I have to. And
Yeah.
it's that reluctance to do it. And but then when he does it, he just fully embraces it. He goes for it. He's like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it full. And meanwhile, that's all going on, and you got Lady Jessica's over here like doing the Benny Gesserit thing of spreading the superstition. She goes south to all the fundamentalists and really spreads it and just gets them
Yeah.
all to back him. And there is, I captured this quote because this one was so good. This is when Gurney shows up and they're walking into one of the sietches, and Gurney's like, wait, you did this with, what is it, 200 or 2,000 men or whatever. And he's like, you got to use this stuff. And I just love this exchange because this told me so much about Paul.
All dying because of me.
Because you lose control.
Because I gain it.
Because he gains that control, and he doesn't want that control. But by the end of it, he has to embrace it, and he does. And it's a little scary.
Yeah. It's
So I really,
it's going to strengthen him as a character
Mhm.
and a ruler, but it's going to weaken him as a person and what he's
Yes.
trying to embody. Yeah, that's another. That's turning the chosen one idea on its head. I really like that.
Yeah.
It didn't feel, as soon as they kept saying chosen one, and I'm like, I don't want another one of these. But yeah, the way that you could tell that the more success that he gains, and that's what I mean. Chalamet plays that really well.
Mhm.
He plays that he doesn't want to do this, but that he has to do it, and then he starts buying into his own mystique.
Yep.
He sells all of that. I don't think Zendaya, again, I think she's much stronger in Challenger, say, or she's been stronger in other movies, but I don't think she's basically just the soldier that kind of attaches herself to the Messiah, right? She's his moral compass, obviously. I don't think
Mhm.
she means much more than that. She's not like trying to be, it's not like Diane Kruger in Troy, like the most, Helen of Troy, the most beautiful woman, and it's like, wow, you've got a lot to live up to, and the character writing isn't really getting you there, even though maybe that's kind of the point of Troy. But I don't think Zendaya is trying. She's not Lady Jessica. Rebecca Ferguson embraces that gravitas better. I just think that Zendaya, she's not just a love interest. She's like that moral compass, but she does what she needs to do and does it very strongly. And I don't think, I keep using other comparisons. Like you use Katie Holmes in Batman Begins. I don't think she's a strong enough actress to pull off the writing that she's given, if that makes any sense. But I think Zendaya, the way that the character isn't written to be grandiose, she's written to be
Right.
this person, and
Mhm.
she does it perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah. She is his moral compass, but she's also cares more about her people and the freedom of them than anything else. That's her driving goal. And
Yeah.
to watch her reactions as Paul does his turn, as he starts to believe his own hype and really go for that, it's a lot of really good acting from her with no words.
Yeah.
And I definitely appreciated that. And even like,
There's a reason.
go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah. No, there's a reason why Spielberg said this was the greatest movie of 2024. There's a reason Coppola said this. There's a reason
Mhm.
Nolan said this. It's like, this is cinema. Like, yeah, there's some dialogue. The whole Dune, it's very pompous. The whole idea, it's very like thought provoking. You're supposed to be super serious. But then you have Jason Momoa and you have Timothée Chalamet. They've got a good chemistry and they're joking around with each other. You're like, I like these guys, right?
Yeah.
You have that kind of human or audience pleasing stuff. And it's that same thing. It's like you've got a lot of these actors and you've got these fun little moments of these character things, but then it also kind of builds into that, again, the world building that we're talking about that Villeneuve does so well, I think.
Yeah. I was a little bit bummed that the one character from the first movie, played by Stephen McKinley Henderson, the Thufir, the Mentat, he
Yeah.
didn't. He was supposed to be in this movie. And in fact, he filmed scenes.
Really?
He did. And Tim Blake Nelson also filmed scenes for this movie. He was the husband of Leah Seydoux.
Oh,
The
really? Okay.
husband or father, I don't remember which. But
I would have liked
both
to
of
see Tim Blake Nelson in here.
yeah, and they both filmed stuff, but it ended up getting cut. Thufir had more of a role where he ends up working with the
in the book.
Harkonnens.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Right,
like
right,
he's
right.
with
He
the
had more of
Harkonnens
a
and all that, and they cut it. And this is a thing that I respect a lot about Villeneuve is he said he's not going to release any deleted scenes from this movie or any of his movies. And one of his things is, I love this quote: "I'm a strong believer that when it's not in the movie, it's dead. I killed my darlings. It's painful. Sometimes I remove shots and I'm like, I can't believe I'm cutting this." But he does it all out of service for the film, and he doesn't want to then go back and like, it's too painful for him to then go back and Frankenstein in something later, or do a director's cut, or put out deleted scenes. He's like, if I cut it, there's a reason that I cut it, and it's gone forever. So like all that stuff with Stephen McKinley Henderson, Tim Blake Nelson. I saw a thing with Rebecca Ferguson talking about a scene she shot with Stellan Skarsgård that was part of like a vision that ended up getting cut, and she loved it, and she was bummed that it got cut, but it kind of made sense in the end. So it's just one of those things.
Right.
But I respect that as a director. It goes to your point where he's got a vision that he wants to get through, and that vision is going like, that's everything is serving that. So even the stuff he
Right.
cuts, sometimes you have to cut the thing you really like.
Yeah. You also have Blade Runner that Ridley Scott just can't stop tinkering with it, or George Lucas with Star Wars, where he can't stop playing and tweaking little things, or adding weird little McClunky or whatever
It's
that they added for the
interesting.
Disney. Yeah. So
it's the artist that can't stop tinkering with a thing versus the one that's like, I made it and it's gone. It's now out there in the world.
And it's everybody else's, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's the Zack Snyder Justice League that did it to people, where people have been enabled. They got this thing that they were clamoring for to kind of show up Warner Brothers, to show up Joss Whedon and say, this is how you make a movie. But now everybody's like, when you hear that there are deleted scenes, people are like, oh, well, we need those deleted scenes out. You have to give us those because we deserve them for whatever reason. There's a huge thing over, I know with Val Kilmer just dying, like people are coming back out of the woodwork with like, oh, there's a director's cut of Batman Forever that Joel Schumacher had cut. And then because they wanted it lighter, he cut all this stuff out. And I'm like, well, Joel Schumacher directed the entire movie like it was a comic book. There's not this second, darker, Zack Snyder-ish Superman in a black suit version that they shot. They didn't shoot scenes twice. You know what I mean?
No.
And Schumacher has said, this is the movie, Batman Forever is the movie that I wanted to make, and it's the movie that I decided to put out in the world. So that's what you get. You don't hear him talking. Obviously, he's passed on, but before that, you didn't hear him talking about how it's so unjustified and it's so unfair that his version never came out. I just don't know if it's the enabling of people these days where they feel like they deserve, or because they hear there's deleted scenes, that there's a whole nother cut out of the movie. No, that's how movies work. There's always going to be deleted scenes and reshoots and things like that.
Oh, absolutely.
But Villeneuve putting his foot down is like, yeah, do that so that people can't say, oh, we deserve a longer cut of this.
It was like, I remember hearing Kevin Smith, I think it was on his podcast, talking about people would tell him they wanted to see the 3-hour cut of Dogma, that like his first cut of Dogma. And he's like, you don't want to see that. It's terrible. It's just more of what was already on the screen, but longer and boring. Like he cut the stuff for a reason. I do enjoy occasionally getting to see deleted scenes, because it's interesting to see like, oh, what was, like, one that I really liked was there was a deleted scene from The Batman with Barry Keoghan as the Joker. And it was a really cool scene, but it wouldn't have fit in the movie at all. But it was interesting to see it and see what they were going for. But I'm also really glad it got cut, because it did not belong in the movie. It's rare.
In the story that you're,
Yeah.
the story that you're telling, there's a difference between telling that story and including something that's just indulgent. I think
Yeah.
including the Joker scene, it would have been, yeah, everybody wants to see Joker and Batman interact, even though we've seen that countless times. Like,
Yep.
I need to see it this way now. And even though the scene works, I appreciate Matt Reeves going, yeah, we filmed it, but it doesn't fit the story that I'm trying. And that's the thing that I think of people, just some movie watchers don't understand. They just want to be placated.
Mhm.
They want everything to be shown to them exactly as they want it. They don't want to have to process stuff. They don't want to have to think about things. They don't want to have to think, well, what does this mean? They want everything told to them. And that is not what Dune is. So
Yeah.
again, more power to Villeneuve for doing something like that.
Yeah. And I mean, it's rare to have a movie that I feel like benefits from a director's cut. Dark City is one I think that does.
Yes. Yeah.
But that was because the movie that got put out was not what Alex Proyas wanted it to be. So there's a difference there. It's the David Lynch Alan Smithy thing with the 84 Dune. Like the movie
Right.
that got made ended up not being what he wanted. So if he
Right.
if he wanted to go back and recut that before he had passed, I wouldn't have a problem with that. But that's different. Villeneuve's like, no, look, I made my movie. This is what I made. That's it. You're never going to see the deleted scenes. Okay, I'm fine with that. You know what? I respect that. That's his form of art. What he puts out is amazing. So
Well, there's a
that
difference
helps.
too. Dark City, I love both versions. Like I agree with you. I think the director's cut is the better movie, but I was in love with that theatrical version
Mhm.
before I knew there were issues. I think because
Sure.
Proyas's voice is so strong in that, and the story he's trying to tell. And again, Roger Ebert was a giant proponent. I think he put Dark City, the theatrical cut, as his top movie of 1998, even though Saving Private Ryan was released that same year. Which you look at that and you're like, wait, what? Like, how did Dark City beat Saving? But it's like, yeah, movies going to affect you in different ways. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that.
Mhm.
But again, you go back to Orson Welles, who's maybe the king of having movies taken out of his hands and screwed
Yep.
up. But Orson Welles is such a strong filmmaker that even if you look at something like Magnificent Ambersons, which famously the studio MGM took it out of his hands and cut out, I think, like an hour of stuff, the movie that we got is still so strong because you can hear Orson Welles' voice and his strength in every shot that I think works. And I think it's the same thing with Dark City. I think that theatrical cut works beautifully still because Proyas' vision was so great that narration, yeah, it's better without it. And Blade Runner is another. That narration, I get they're going for the film noir Bogart, Sam Spade thing, but
Sure.
Harrison Ford sounds so bored. Like you can tell he didn't want to do that.
Right.
And there's a difference, but when Rutger Hauer says that speech about like Tears and Rain, that monologue, right?
Mhm.
Having him die off and you just see the Deckard character processing it, what's going on. And as an audience, you're like, that's amazing. This guy that he's hunting because he's a robot had a human moment where he decided to be human. His very last act was to act like a human, right? And you
Yep.
get that. But in the theatrical cut, you have Harrison Ford go, I couldn't believe that he did all this stuff and it's amazing. And I'm watching it going, I'm not an idiot. I could have gotten that. Why are you treating me so stupid? So
Yep. Yeah.
big difference.
Sometimes, like, I know filmmaking 101 is assume your audience doesn't know anything and you have to like point everything out to them. I remember
Right.
hearing that, but like, we don't always need that. I love a movie that respects the audience and lets them figure some stuff out. I don't need a shot of an air vent and tassels on the air vent to show that there's air moving. I can infer that there's air coming out of that vent.
Right.
So, and that's where your better directors can get their voice out there and let you then piece those things together. There's a lot of stuff in Dune that they just show you and then you piece it together.
Mhm.
And I really appreciate that. Villeneuve's just good at that.
Yeah, but then there are other movies where I don't want to think.
Yeah.
You
Oh
know,
no, absolutely.
yeah. So you just have to, like you said, you're never the same person from when you watch a movie the first time to when you watch it the second time. I famously cannot put together a top 10 list of movies because if I put it together today, next week
Yep.
my list is going to be completely different. Why am I wasting my time putting this list together now?
Yeah.
It's so amenable. It changes and it reshapes stuff. I can tell you certain movies that are always going to be on that top 10, but I
Mhm.
can't give you an exact list. So yeah, again, sometimes you don't need to. I just think again, with Dune, you need a movie. It needs to be this way. I don't know if the Lynch version was that so much as what this is, where it depends on you to be a smart person watching it. And
Yeah.
what I really liked about Dune Part 2 is, yeah, as soon as they decide, when Paul says he's launching his offensive, right? And I was totally in. I'm like, it's not just thought provoke. It's exciting from a popcorn movie perspective. And yeah, I
Mhm.
should have seen this in the big screen, but again, it's that idea that Paul is amassing this power and it's making him a terrible person,
Yeah.
right? And so it does have that at the same time. I love that it plays on those two different levels. That's once the setup is done, now you can get into the meat of it. I think it does a really good job as a sequel.
Yeah. Also, it's interesting to know that this movie is 166 minutes long. The
Mm.
entirety of this story in Dune Part 2 was 39 minutes of the David Lynch movie. So, what does that tell you? Like,
Yeah.
they the studio really set him up to fail in a lot of ways,
Mhm.
and I can understand why he would want to take his name off of that at that point.
Well, it's because you show it to an audience and they're like, well, what is Dune means nothing if you're just going to rush past all this stuff and
Yeah.
not give it the attention. They can tell that something is wrong. And so they won't go back to it. They won't tell their
Mhm.
friends to go see it.
Right. If you ever get a chance and you're interested at all in the story, revisiting that, the 2000 miniseries that ran on Sci-Fi Channel, it's, I think, 3 or 4 episodes. It's a really good version of it because they do get to stretch it out. Now, it is early 2000s cable TV budget, so
Sci-Fi Channel, right?
you gotta bear that in mind when you're watching it. But
Right.
I thought it was pretty good overall.
But
It's
still,
not at this level. It's really
it's still
not.
better quality than the Lynch
Yes.
recut.
No, it
So,
absolutely is.
yeah, it's an improvement on this. So at least, yeah,
And
I'll put it on my list.
I know there's another. So Villeneuve's going to do a third Dune film, and I'm really curious to see where that goes because we got an introduction to his younger sister, to Paul's younger sister in this, who, if I remember right, in the book and I think in the miniseries,
She's already out.
She's
a
born in
player.
like a toddler
Yeah,
or something. So it'll be curious to see how that kind of goes about. Also, I remember when I went to the theater to watch this, had no idea Anya Taylor-Joy was going to show up for a cameo at all, and thought that was interesting. Like, I guess they got her for a day. Like, all right, we're going to put you in some
Yeah.
makeup. Here you go.
They kept it a secret. I think they were surprised that they kept it a secret for that long because I think
I-
they even spoiled it on Letterboxd that she was in it.
Probably.
And again, it's one of those things where she shows up. I'm like, oh, so she's going to be in the next one. So that kind of puts you on guard. You're like, okay, I'm going to not expect certain things from this movie now. I can only expect it to go so far because I know that
Mhm.
Anya Taylor-Joy is going to come back into it again. Not from a giant epic storytelling. I get what they're doing, but when I watch these movies, that I wanted to go out on a high with Dune Part. I'm sorry, but like
No.
the only thing that I need these movies to tell me a complete story. I can't
Yes.
have a sequel and that's what I mean. It's like I can't really judge these movies fully until I see all of them put together,
Yeah.
see Villeneuve's vision complete.
Yep.
So
I can
there's
understand
just a
that.
part of me that, yeah, I pull back. Okay, there's only a certain thing that this movie can accomplish.
And that's where something like his, Arrival or Blade Runner 2049 does tell a complete story.
Yeah.
And so it's a little easier to judge a movie like that because you're seeing all of it. It is tough when, especially when you know there's more. Like if you didn't know there was more, you can kind of grasp and be like, all right, so, here's what it is. But knowing, yeah, there's more coming and he's working on that now. You want to
Right.
see that and see how it fleshes out because this is a lot of stuff going on. So,
Right. Well, what if they made Rogue One without making any other Star Wars movies? What if there was no other Star Wars movie besides Rogue One? Who the hell is this Darth Vader guy? What does he matter?
right? Yeah.
Why do we get to see these other characters have their movie stop and then you spend an entire 10 minutes on this Darth Vader character? Who is this guy? Why is he wearing a robot suit? Like it would leave you with all these questions
Yeah.
that are never answered. But because it's
true.
part of a larger franchise, it can take those shortcuts. So that's what I appreciate all of this. There's still more story to be told, and I understand.
Sure.
That.
No, absolutely. But I'm glad that you got to watch it and finish at least this 2-part story,
Yeah.
and get to see that, because I wonder too, does it help part 1 a little bit now? Do you think maybe
It
rewatching
I
that?
want to watch it again just to see again, huge compliment to the second one. It makes me wanna like I said, I need to see but maybe I won't rewatch it until Dune Messiah comes out. Maybe I'll need to see the whole complete before I decide. I just don't I can't spend the 2.5 hours or whatever and be disappointed again, if that makes
Fair
any
enough.
sense. So,
No, no,
I'll watch it
absolutely does.
again, and I'm open to the idea of it being a completely different movie, but I'll wait until I get the complete picture, I think. But the great thing about your show, Travis, it really kicks me in the ass to watch these things that I need to watch. I love that the whole thing you're watching Endgame. I was like, I'm glad I finally ticked that off my box because I don't want to have this whole I haven't seen Endgame hanging over my shoulders forever. I need to get this over. Same thing with Dune 2. It got such a big response, and I have friends that are like, you need to see this. What, you haven't seen this? Like, how can you not see this? So I'm glad that I've finally seen it. And again, that's when we were talking about what to bring on. I was like, well, I want to do Dune 2. I've watched the first one. I've got the first part. Let's do this. And I'm really grateful. I have a new respect for Dune that I wouldn't have had if I just decided to leave Dune where it was. So
Good.
again, great idea for your podcast, just to have people confront these things that they haven't, to get these bucket list things off their shoulders and be more complete as a film goer. I really think you've got a great hook.
Oh,
I
thank
like
you.
it.
It's a thing I like, because I like either doing this, being on this side of it, where it's like, this is a thing that's really great, you should check it out. And I like being on the other side of it, where somebody comes to me with a movie that either I just missed or hadn't even heard of, and I get to broaden my horizons. Like last fall, I watched One Cut of the Dead. I don't know if you've seen that,
Okay.
but
Yes.
holy
Yeah, terrific.
cow, like that blew my mind. Like, and the person that brought it to me, Miles, he's yet to miss. Like he always suggests really fun movies. So I was like,
Yeah,
all right, I'm probably going to enjoy this, but I didn't realize how much I would. That's
yeah,
one of those things. So thank you, because I do enjoy the discourse on movies and talking about them and exploring it, because art is a lot of fun and it is very subjective, but it's really cool to see different perspectives, because I have a connection to Dune, and so I really like the story that's being told, because it's a fairly simple story, but the characters are interesting to me.
uh-huh.
But I like hearing from another perspective of like, the story didn't grab you, but there's so much else about the filmmaking that makes it worthwhile to watch.
Yeah,
So I really like that.
yeah, a lot of fun.
So you've got some projects you probably want to tell people about. You working on anything
Yeah, well,
recently?
let's see. What movie did I just watched The Farewell with my daughter.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the names now. Anyway, people who know what The Farewell is, like, being half Asian,
Hmm.
I knew the poster. So I kind of had an idea of what the movie, at least what the movie was going to feel like. And again, I adored. It just felt like I've had those conversations with my family back in New York. They're all moved out to Utah now, but my Chinese family used to live in New York, and I used to go visit them during the summers. And so I've had the conversations that the characters had. I've been looked at the way that my family looks at me, or the way that characters look at the Aquafina character. So I just adored the whole thing. I like the idea of so profound, the idea that it's the fear of the cancer that gets you, not as much as the actual cancer. I love that whole idea. So as far as, and again, that's you talking about One Cut of the Dead. They're kind of different movies, even though they're both, I think One Cut of the Dead is Asian, but it's like
Mhm.
you you feel complete. I'm like, this is a part of me that I didn't have until I watched this movie, and now I feel
Yeah.
more complete there. So yeah, that more recently, that's something that I'd absolutely recommend to people. And I'm sure you're gonna, even if you're not Asian, even if you're Muslim, anything like that, I'm sure that it's gonna hit you, and you'll be able to recognize a lot of the character foibles. But yeah, just something that I've recently seen that was just kind of life changing for me.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, Darren, thank you so much for being here this week. This was fun.
Oh,
It's always
yes,
a great conversation. We'll have to do it again for
yeah,
sure. I'm
I'll have
loving
to bring
bringing
the
you
movie to
movies, but
you.
yeah, you got to bring me something now.
That'll be the next thing,
I'm
right?
sure you've got one.
Yeah,
I have no doubt we'll find one.
I'll just need to watch your Twitter feed and then find out. Oh, he
There you
hasn't
go.
seen that one. I've got one.
Yeah. But no, thank you so much for being here. This is super fun. I do this show weekly. without stopping because I have a problem. Even if I go out of town, I find ways to
do
make
it, yeah.
sure that it gets done. But I do stream it live on Twitch. So if you want to come hang out and be like a Stigma or Ashcat or Tondagosa in the chat and chat with us, I do watch the chat while I'm doing this. So you can definitely get that. But also, show comes out on Wednesdays anywhere you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. And you can go to tvstravis.com, find any of that. I've also got merchandise. I got Patreon. Patreon helps me do things like I've got an upcoming live episode in Las Vegas.
Oh, okay.
That'll be a lot of fun. I'm going out there for TMS Vegas, and it's a little get together, and I'm going to do a live episode with my friend Steven. I'm making him watch Smokin' Aces. He's never seen it.
Oh,
It's
all
going to be
right.
fun.
That'll be wild.
Yeah, it will be. It felt like an appropriate movie to do out in Vegas, even though that
In
one's
Vegas.
technically, I think, Reno, but still close enough.
Close enough.
It's Nevada.
Yeah.
Where can people find what you're working on, Darin?
Well, speaking of bucket lists, like Nostalgiacast, we just kicked off our 6th season, and Johnny and I really had a fun time doing our 90s Palooza season where we talked about 90s movies that's what we cut our teeth on. And we wanted to go back and do 90s movies again, but try to find a bigger hook. And now we call it our bucket list season, movies that we've always wanted to talk about.
Nice.
Even if they're really popular, we want to basically get it on the record and talk about our feelings about it. And then over at Back to Bluey, which I run with my partner, Robert, we just kicked off our 3rd season. I just had somebody make fun of me about how I run a Bluey podcast and I can't be taken seriously, but it's like, well, Bluey, as a parent, it's very important. And once this person that was making fun of me is a parent, maybe they'll understand a little better. But it's like,
Sure.
yeah, we're having a lot of good conversations about what it's about. We say this all the time. It's about anthropomorphic talking dogs, but there are profound things that are said there. And so we're having just a lot of great conversations over it. Back to Blue. You can find me at DW Lumberg on Twitter. Find me at DW Lumberg on Blue Sky, whatever the handle is there. But yeah, just check out Nostalgiacast Back to Blue. We'd love to have you. Travis, I've got to figure out a way to get you on our show. It's just making so many promises to so many different people. It's like, oh, I don't have room for these guys this season, but we're going to get you on eventually.
Excellent. I'm there.
I've made that good. I'd love to
Anytime.
have you on. I love these conversations, even though we chat a lot on Twitter, but like we've had these 2 conversations I've had on your show have been super fun, and I appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you. So thank you, and definitely anytime. Now, next episode, next week, I am sticking recent, but I'm going for a bit different of a movie. I have MC Williams coming back, and he has finally gotten me to watch. I will be watching RRR.
Oh, okay.
Which I have
That'll
not
be
seen.
fun.
Everybody keeps telling me I need to see it. I have a friend of the show, Bombats, who helped design my website, loves the movie and constantly talks about it and badgers me. So when I mentioned that, I had to mention to him, I was like, hey, I'm finally going to watch RRR. And I think he just lit up like a Christmas tree. So I'm excited for that. So that's what's coming up next week is RRR with MC Williams. So I can't wait for that. You definitely want to, I've seen a couple of clips of it, and it's wild is the right word. So I can't wait. But yeah, until then, Darin, thank you for being here. We'll do this again sometime. And until the next one, remember to enjoy your movies, everybody. And we're getting into the nicer weather. So let's go outside and be excellent to each other. I don't know. That was just fun throat singing, weird voice.
Very Dune-ish.